Camera. Good morning. We are hoping you all have a good start to your day. We will be starting with you on several places in just a moment. We're going to get you guys out of the waiting room. We're going to get rid of the waiting room. Shared his time with us today, so we're so thankful for that. Wayne, I'm going to go ahead and now let you be the host and leave leave you alone again. All right, sir, you are the host again.
Screen share back up. How are you guys today? Good.
A little, I told my husband, well, it looks like a winter day in the sky, but it doesn't
Feel
feel
like
like it in
October.
the air.
Definitely warmer this year.
You're relieved.
Mm-hmm. That's why we're here today, guys. It's getting serious out there.
Yes, it is.
And I think it's sort of one of the weird side effects about kind of the age we're in, right, is a lot heavier weather events, like really cold, really hot, really wet, really dry, and like all of the moderate days are sort of lesser and lesser, which makes it even more important to sort of have a shelter that allows you to not participate in the ultra hot days or those ultra cold days.
And Wayne, if you wouldn't mind speaking up just a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let me know if we're
you are good. You're good to go. I will let you work on magic and leave.
cool. So, we're gonna chat about HDMI cable is giving me a slight bit of technical difficulties.
Never went home while Wayne is adjusting that. We wanted to thank you guys all for being here today on behalf of all of us at Exit Strategy Realty. We are looking forward to making this a series of green and sustainable content for you and for the entire Realtor community. There is also some information online. You can go to realtorfinancialresources.com and you will see links to our upcoming events and some other resources from Exit Strategy Realty. But Wayne is your amazing speaker and knowledge base today, not me. So Wayne, take it away, sir.
Cool. Thank you, Nick. So market transformation for realtors. So why do I call it market transformation? So we have been through a couple ages in our housing. You know, when you first started building American housing, frontier housing, you know, fueled by wood, then came the coal age, then came oil, natural gas, and now we're in the electric age. We're getting away from fossil fuels. There's a big reason we're getting away from fossil fuels. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we call it market transformation because it means that we are literally going to transform the way our houses work, operate, and are fueled. There's a stat out there. 80% of the houses that we're going to have in our lives in 2050 already exist. So what does that mean? That means by 2050, when the climate crisis gets to its peak, 80% of the places we live in will still be the houses we have today, which are not sustainable at that time, right? So because by the time we get there, fuel costs are gonna be very high. The impact of carbon is going to be significant to that generation. So as realtors, we really want to think a little bit about this. It's 2024, we have 26 years until we get to that point. So we really want to start thinking about how we can influence the market. And, you know, I think that like, when we think about our influence on our clients, we're not really convinced that we have a lot of sway with them. But when it comes to asking advice of, hey, what do you think of this home inspection? Hey, what about the insulation of this house? Hey, what about the heating system on this inspection report? Or when we're touring through houses, being able to identify the quality level of a building, right? These are things that if you develop a skill base for, your clients are going to become reliant on you for. And once they become reliant on you for that, you become an influencer in their lives and how they fuel their future. Okay? So it's my goal to impart onto you guys what I know about energy and housing so that you guys can be better realtors and better building scientists. So market transformation is what we're going to call it.
Calendar.
Move to our
There's no link to get me to it.
And if you are at home, we would love it if you would mute yourselves. Thank you so much.
So there's some key terms we have to start off with. So how do we define sustainability? What is sustainability? What does it mean, right? So there's an accepted term in the industry, the ability for the current generation to meet its needs while not compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So what does that mean? You and I can get to work. You and I can keep the house warm. You and I can cook dinner. But we're not going to take away the opportunity for our children to do that for themselves. Okay, that's what sustainability is in the building industry. And that's a hard one to wrap your brain around a little bit, but it sort of orients our goal. If our goal is to be sustainable, that is our goal, is to meet our needs while allowing future generations to meet their needs. What is green building? So green building, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there about what being green is. So we're going to start off by just kind of clarifying the definition of a green building. The EPA defines a green building as the practice of creating structures and using processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout a building's life cycle, from siting to design, construction, operation, maintenance, renovation, and deconstruction. That's a whole lot, right? Where the building is, how it's built, what's going to happen when the building's done, right? We have to consider all those things when we're using the term green. So if you're using a toxic foam that off-gases a lot of carbon to insulate your building and it costs a ton of carbon, is that green, right? Maybe it makes your building more efficient, maybe it makes your building more comfortable, but what's the cost of that material, right? So we're thinking about our materials. If you're building a house in the desert and you're orienting all the windows to the south, right? You're now taking all that radiant heat into the building. We're not considering site properly. So there's various things you can think about when you're building a building in design. Now this applies to new construction. There are some things about renovating that you can't control. You can't control the site. Can't control where the windows are sometimes, right? Can't control the materials that have been used in the past and the carbon that's already been spent. Okay. What is energy efficiency? Energy efficiency is the use of less energy to perform the same task or produce the same result. So it's really to understand, we use energy to do work, right? And if you use less energy to do the same amount of work, you are more efficient. And so our goal with energy efficiency, and you have to think about this in terms of the consumer, if you told any of your clients that they have to give up something in their lives to become more efficient, you're going to hit a lot of resistance with that, right? So before we can start making really hard choices about what we're gonna give up or not, we have to just become more efficient with the current choices we make. And then we can get to that next step. Does that make sense? So these are just some guiding principles as we go here. So environmental impact of housing in Chicago. This is a really eye-opening number. Because I think if you ask most people, what is the leading carbon contribution in Chicago? I think a lot of people would say transit. I drive, we got highways, we got trains, we got buses. Believe it or not, it's more than 75% of Chicago's housing stock is older than 1942. And because of that, 62% of our carbon emissions in the city of Chicago come from buildings. So we are heating and cooling our buildings. 62% of the carbon we emit as a city comes from those buildings, not our cars, not O'Hare Airport, not any of those things, right? So that's a big, and guess what? This is our industry, right? So this is the business we're in, right? So we can affect that number quite a bit. I'll share these slides with the group later, but this slide is particularly nice because it talks a little bit about Chicago's climate action plan. And you see here, right around the year 2027, the goal is to bend down Chicago's carbon emissions towards 2040. Okay. So this is progressive. It's not all at once, but it does want us to start thinking and making investments and becoming more efficient. Here have a gas furnace, right, at home, most people, okay? So if I were to tell you that gas furnace at your house, its days are limited, right? If we're gonna hit 2040 carbon emissions that a gas furnace has to go. So what does that mean? That means somebody has to come into that building and replace that equipment, right? So workforce development is an economic benefit of fighting climate change. We have lots of people in our neighborhoods that need jobs. There is money from the Inflation Reduction Act to provide training. There are organizations trying to get off the ground that are going to be training insulators, heat pump installers, all these different trades. And this is economic opportunity in our neighborhoods to help us make our neighborhoods healthier and better places. Yeah.
Does it work for boilers too? Because I have a boiler.
We're gonna talk a little bit about boilers, but retrofitting boilers is coming. But there's one problem with boilers. They don't do air conditioning. So, and we have, the city of Chicago has a new cooling ordinance that's gonna be coming into effect, right? And so at some point, boilers too will be obsolete. But we can talk about ways they may stick around, so in different ways. Reinvestments in under-resourced communities. So let's think about where our oldest furnaces and water heaters are. Are they in Lincoln Park or are they in Englewood? Right. So where are the highest carbon footprints in Chicago? Right, and those disparate impact, where are those emissions concentrated? Those emissions go up the chimney and then where? In that neighborhood, right? So if we have a bunch of old heating equipment concentrated in a neighborhood, we have higher energy bills in that neighborhood. We have poor air quality in that neighborhood. We have no cooling in that neighborhood because it's probably potentially is a radiator system, right? So we have lots of challenges, right, in our low to moderate income neighborhoods to really think about reinvesting in our energy infrastructure. So we have workforce development. Gee, wouldn't it be great to train people from the neighborhoods that are most effective, right, to do work in those neighborhoods and keep that money in that neighborhood, right? So that's an idea that's out there and that we should be talking about with our clients and with our developers and business owners. If you know an HVAC contractor, for example. We should be talking about reinvestment in under-resourced communities. There's tons of money in the Inflation Reduction Act that provides rebates to 80 to 140 AMI households. So if you are in a moderate income household, there are a lot of rebates. And if you're in a low income household, there's even more rebates that are gonna be coming to you to swap out to a heat pump, to swap out to all this equipment we're talking about. Okay, we're gonna have to become the conduits to explain those programs to our clients. We're gonna have to become well versed in talking about that. By the way, this program is a 10-year program, so this isn't like the next 6 months, then money runs out and it goes away and you gotta learn a new program. This is gonna be around until 2034. So we have a lot of time to help our clients make this transition. So it's really important for us to become well versed in it. And once we start dealing with investors and developers, it becomes even more important to influence them in this way. Does that make sense to everybody? So decrease energy poverty. So what comes with an old leaky house with an old boiler system? In January, you get a high gas bill, right? And so there are numbers out there that up to 6% of households in Chicago, 6% of low to moderate income households in Chicago, up to 6% of their income is spent on fuel. So you got what, 30-ish, maybe 40-ish to housing, right? As we know, people got to get around, right? So now they got to fuel their car, they got to fuel their house, 6% to fueling. And of course, Uncle Sam in Illinois, right? They all want money. Energy is not tax deductible, right? So we really got to consider energy cost a burden on a lot of our communities. And as soon as we start having that conversation in those terms, I think we start understanding there's a huge social justice component to what we're talking about. We talk about disparate issues, right? So the urban heat island is a giant land. Right? It's a bunch of pavement and a bunch of green spaces.
Oh, I actually sent him and he didn't call me back, and then I sent him a text message this morning. And can you please let me know what time? So I'll respond. I'm just waiting for him to respond.
I mean, the grass is warm, but it's not hot like it's out. Now, what if you walk out into a piece of asphalt? Super hot, right? So why is that? So these materials, concrete, asphalt, have what's called a high heat capacity. So they're able to keep absorbing radiant heat and getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and they just store that energy and keep heating. Does that make sense? So at nighttime, when the temperature is cool, those concrete surfaces, those asphalt surfaces are still radiating, right? So if it's a 100-degree day and you live in a neighborhood with no green space, at nighttime, the air might be 80, your neighborhood's still 100, right? Because that material is still cooling and heating up your housing, heating up the residents of that neighborhood. That is what we call the urban heat island effect. This is a map that shows an urban heat island index. So it's done off thermal imagery where they show how hot parts of the city are during certain heat waves, right? And you can see here the core of the city where most of the pavement is, right? And most of the taller buildings are very, very red hot. Masonry buildings store a lot of heat, sidewalks, all those things, right? So let's say draw a line right down the middle here, say this part, and then draw a line maybe this way, that part. There's no central air conditioning in most of those houses. So what happens at nighttime when people are supposed to recover from these heat waves? They suffer. There is no recovery from the heat wave, right? And days upon days of heat exposure lead to bad health outcomes in those neighborhoods. Certain neighborhoods have central air conditioning. So of course their carbon footprint is higher because they're now using a lot of electricity to cool those buildings, but they're able to stay safe. Does that make sense? What's first? Safety. Second, efficiency, right? So survival always comes first for a human. You're not gonna give up gasoline and die, right? You're gonna burn a chair to stay warm in the winter, you know? So at the end of the day, urban heat island is something to really understand. Indoor air quality, and developmental issues are also another big issue. So in houses with older combustion equipment, gas stoves, furnaces, hot water heaters, how many people here have seen an old hot water heater in a kitchen next to the kitchen sink? In a house they've shown?
Been years.
You haven't been to Pilsen lately. But so it's very common in Chicago where people have had supplemental heat out of their stoves in the wintertime. They have old furnaces that have crocked heat exchangers. They have old stoves that burn when they're cooking, right? These combustion byproducts are in your home, they're in your air. So we've recently learned that there's a huge correlation between gas combustion stoves and childhood asthma. Well, where is asthma most prevalent in Chicago? Right? In the same neighborhoods with the oldest gas combustion appliances, right? So again, another social justice issue. Outdoor air quality. We talked a little bit about the emissions from those furnaces, the emissions from all that, that's all happening in your neighborhood, right? So if you have older fossil fuel burning equipment, imagine if everybody in your neighborhood still heated their house with coal. How much soot would be coating the neighborhood? We're still using natural gas, so we're still using the same amount of combustion. It's just not dirty, so it's less visible. But those byproducts are still in the air, the carbon monoxide, nitrous dioxide, benzene. There's a lot of this stuff that leads to poor health outcomes. The more you understand it, the more you start to see how it becomes really crucial to move away from these fuels. Inequality and resiliency. How many people here have been on a home inspection recently? Okay. How much insulation was in that house that you know was inspected? None? A little bit?
Attics, uninsulated.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some.
Some? So, wasn't impressive though, right?
Well, I mean, I didn't do the whole inspection.
So one of the things I always tell us to really like look at, and this is something you're gonna look at much more now that you've been through this, right? Uninsulated homes are not resilient. When you have a polar vortex and it hits -15 outside, that house can't stay warm. That's a 10. Right? So when it's 100 degrees outside, that house can't stay cool. And so we need to think about this more and more because before our sense of security is tied into our house, right? When you go home, you're supposed to feel safe. And when an extreme weather event comes and threatens your perception of safety, that interrupts a lot of things in your life. Right? So insulation is safety. And that's a strange concept for people, right? We always think of insulation as this sort of luxury item. You know, it's good if we got it because we live in Chicago and our houses are old. We need it. It's part of a healthy house, okay? Urban flooding, not a big issue, basements, you know, and we could talk a little bit about that as we go. Buildings, when we do construction, it's either new construction or gut renovation. We have our buildings certified when we're green. Why? You may tell me why we have a certification instead of just saying, oh, no, it's green. Because people lie all the time in real estate, right? People make stuff up, right? They're gonna greenwash. And so a certification is quality control. A third-party rater has been through that house at various phases during the construction, has done a blower door test, has checked the insulation, has checked the commissioning of the mechanical equipment, and has says that this building, this is the performance of that building. It's quantified mathematically.
Say it's happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is not like, this building is nice. This building has a 37 HERS score. We're gonna talk about what that means. These certifications are really critical. Some of them even quantify the amount of money that house saves you every year over a typical house. Right? That's not, $3,300 is not a small amount of money. Types of certifications. There's zero energy ready homes, which you're gonna see more and more of. These are all electric buildings that have been through a blower door test for air sealing. They've had their insulation verified, and they have their heating and cooling systems spec'd, so they understand what they are. LEED for homes, this is a little bit of a higher standard. It's more intensive, you're gonna see it less often, but it's out there. It costs more to administer. FIAS is a passive house, international United States. So FIAS is effectively, or Passive House Institute, United States. FIAS is an organization that subscribes to a zero energy footprint for a living building. They want houses to go passive. So they literally don't need energy to heat themselves. Energy Star, that's a rating we're all familiar with on appliances and things. Would it shock you if I told you this year, this fall, the EPA removed every air conditioner on the market from Energy Star? You can no longer buy an air conditioner with an Energy Star logo.
Because.
It has to be a heat pump now. We're gonna talk about that. Pearl certification. So this is an organization that aligns quite well with us realtors. They have an app that you can load on your phone, and you can go in and tour the house and certify that house with Pearl by taking photos of the insulation, taking photos of the mechanical equipment, and they will walk you through a certification process. If you have a seller who has a house that is rehabbed or well insulated or has some competitive advantage that's hard to get value out of when you're having to sell that house, a Pearl certification is a great thing to do because it helps you prove that value to the other agents. Does that make sense? They give you a report you can hand somebody. EPA Indoor Air Plus. So indoor air quality is a big deal to people right now. And so EPA Indoor Air Plus is a certification that you're going to start seeing. Do you have any questions on certification?
Are certifications solely for single family homes and buildings? What about condos?
Yeah, so they're multi-unit, individual units and multi-units. I would say it's less common on one individual condo. Typically, you're seeing certifications on renovations. So where somebody's going to get renovation. So a new condo conversion, they could have that certified. Single family home construction obviously is pretty easy. 2 flat, 3 flat, pretty easy. I was just in a 0H 15-unit building, a zero energy ready 15-unit building that was just built the other day. And Pearl is great for existing. So like if you have a condo and you want to make sure that you point out, hey, this thing's got new mechanical systems, it's got updated windows, it's got induction cooktop, it's got a hybrid hot water heater, which you're going to learn about today. If it's got those things and you want to be able to really add that value to your presentation, Pearl's great certification after that. So let's talk a little bit about how we certify a building, like what type of testing do they do? So what we're looking at here at this pink door on your screen is a blower door. So what's happening is they're actually drawing air out of the building to get that interior pressure to 50 pascals. It simulates a 25-mile-an-hour wind around the house. So imagine you're standing inside your house, the wind is blowing 25 miles an hour. There's air leakage, right, in your house. The moment that happens, you're feeling drafts. Right? So this door simulates that 50 pascal pressure, and then they can do a couple things. One, they can figure out how much air they're able to pull through, and they can get what's called air changes per hour. So how many times that house leaks every hour at that pressure. So imagine you're blowing up a balloon. It's got a tiny, tiny little hole in it. And you blow it up, blow it up, blow it up, the balloon gets really big. And then you take a couple breaths, and as you take a couple breaths, that balloon's starting to shrink. Slowly, slowly, slowly. ACH is this, how fast that balloon shrinks. Right, so if you got a high ACH, let's say 7 air changes per hour, you have to blow that balloon up 7 times every hour. If you have a low ACH, let's say 1 air change per hour, you blow up that balloon once per hour. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of leaking, a lot of gas going out,
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of heat going out.
let's talk about that number, right?
The
So-
windows in the wintertime, that's what that means.
So everybody's familiar with BTUs on a furnace, like let's say a building needs 100,000 BTUs, right? To heat that building, okay? The volume of air, one time, the room temperature, 100,000 BTUs. Let's say that building changes air 7 times per hour. So how many BTUs per hour are we talking about?
700,000?
Yeah.
Wow. So it keeps on, that's what I.
ACH
Oh,
times 100,000 BTUs is 700,000 BTUs per hour. Right?
That's when you hear that furnace clicking on and off, clicking on, clicking on and off.
Now, how about a house with ACH of 1? How many BTUs per hour? Okay, 1 ACH times 100,000 BTUs equals 100,000 BTUs per hour. So, without even talking about insulation, just talking about air leakage. Okay, we're not even discussing insulation yet. We haven't even gotten there, right? This is just air infiltrating the building. This house is already 7 times more efficient than this house. Right? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so that's how important that number is.
Well, and that would be nice for your clients to know, like, that's a whole lot less gas to spend.
How hard is it to air seal a house? It's not really hard.
Mm.
You install a blower door and you walk around with a smoke pencil finding all the leaks. You have a couple cans of foam, some caulk here and there, you'll find the leaks. Right? There's not a lot of them. Well, I mean, there can be. The leaks can get pretty serious, but you can get a house from 7 air changes per hour to 2 or 3 with simple effort. Getting to 1, that's gonna be hard, but let's say you get it to 3. Is that a big change in how much that energy? Let's say you use 5 cans of great stuff and 2 cans of caulk to get there. Is that worth it? It's worth it, right? Okay, so ultimately, it's important to understand that air sealing is one of the biggest places, one of the reasons we're at 62% of our energy from buildings, right? And it's important to understand that air leaks are also a comfort factor for people. The house feels a lot better. It's important to understand that air leaks are a health issue as well. You know, if that house can't keep up in a polar vortex, it might be able to keep up if the ACH wasn't so high, right? So we have to think about leakage in that way, right? So what's another kind of test? Envelope insulation inspection. So when a rater comes in and it's a construction project, whether it's a renovation or whether it's new construction, they're gonna look at the building's envelope. So what's the envelope? It's an imaginary thing. It's a red line you draw from the top of the building to the bottom of the building. And anywhere that line doesn't stay solid is an air break. Does that make sense? So in other words, if you've got a sill plate sitting on top of a foundation wall, does everybody know what a sill plate is? If you've got a frame building, that underground it's concrete, above ground it's wood. That sill plate is the transition between the concrete foundation and the wood frame of the building. And oftentimes, you know, old house, that sill plate, there's no gasket in there, there's no caulk in there, there's no sealant in there. And that is where air comes into the house. As the air rises up like a chimney through the house because you're heating it, That heat rises, escapes out the attic, because you've got a leaky attic. The replacement air is coming in underneath that cell plate, right? These are all things we need to start thinking about as realtors. When we look at a house, if you look in the basement, you see that wood sill plate sitting right on that foundation wall, that's a great place to have some air sealing done. Because that'll slow that rise of that heat into that attic, right? So even if the attic is leaking, there's no replacement air. And if there's no replacement air, the heat doesn't rise as fast. It slows the AC air. Does that make sense to everybody? Mechanical systems, they look at appliances, they look at indoor air quality. We're gonna talk about that today a little bit. They look at EPA Indoor Air Plus standards. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. Duct leakage test, and these, all these energy raters are certified typically by a company called BPI, or Buildings Performance Institute. And they know how to use all their equipment in a way that helps them navigate how to make homes more energy efficient. So if you know somebody out there who wants to make their home more efficient, if you yourself want to make your home more efficient, you can call a BPI certified energy rater to come visit your house and floor door test it and do an inspection of the house and help give you recommendations. So the first step before you do anything, before you go out and hire an insulator, before you replace any mechanical equipment or replace the windows, is to have the house assessed. You need to know what condition that house is in currently and where the best place to put money is. How many times have I seen a house with solar but no attic insulation? That doesn't make any sense to me. Right? Attic insulation is far cheaper than solar. Start there. And does the solar make you more comfortable? Nope. Does it improve your indoor air quality? No. Does it reduce your utility bills? No. Insulation does all those things, and it's cheaper. So that's an example of somebody using priorities the wrong way. If you spend your money on solar and you should have spent it on insulation, you could be saving money already to help you buy solar later, right? So prioritization is really critical. Conservation first, insulation, air sealing, mechanical system second, and renewables third. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about more of that in detail. So air tightness. We did a little math here a second ago. We talked a little bit about this, but we're going to go into some more detail. So there's a couple benefits of air tightness. One, why am I talking about benefits? I said air tightness, that's feature, right? If I tell you as a realtor, hey, this house has one ACH, this crowd now knows what that means, right? That's a good thing. Does your buyer know what it means? They have no
Air
idea.
changes per hour.
That's right, that's right. So we don't talk features, we talk benefits. That's what we do as realtors, right? This car has a 2-car garage. No. This car has a garage which allows you to charge the EV you just drove up in securely. That's a benefit, right? That's a better way to sell a house than just saying there's a 2-car garage. They may not draw the link between the garage and their EV, but you as a realtor, if you're selling it, benefits are what sells, not features, right? So benefits of air tightness, less pollution into the home, less pollen, less wildfire smoke, less expressway fumes. Remember I was telling you that, the air is infiltrating under that sill plate, right? And heat's rising through the house and out the attic. Well, so all this air that's coming in through the sill plate, what's underneath that sill plate? Dirt, mold, pollen, mice droppings, right? I mean, think about how many things your air is lit. This is your air filter, right? This is the air coming into your house, right? So when you air seal a home, there is less pollution in that home. Does that make sense? And people say, well, a house needs to breathe. We're going to talk about that. It does need to breathe, but it needs to breathe intentionally. Less energy required to heat and cool the home, we talked about that. The amount of air changes per hour and how it reduces your energy cost, right? Because it, 7 air changes per hour is 7 times more energy than 1 air change per hour, right? Less chance of condensation, which can lead to mold or structural rot. So what happens when a 70-degree house, you're inside your house is 70 degrees, right? Winter time, right now, when you left home, thermostat was a 70.
74.
Let's say you get home tonight and it's 0 outside and it's still 74 in your house. So that space where that heat is leaking out, that heat carries a lot of what? Moisture. Because hot air can carry a ton of moisture. Cold air carries no moisture. So that hot air is being driven to cold, it's finding that air leak, and it's taking with it the moisture inside your house. How many of you get static shocks inside your house?
A lot of moisture.
So if you got static in your house, it's because your air is too dry. It's because you have a lot of air leaks, right? So all that moisture is leaving your house through all these air leaks. As it goes through those building materials, what does it do? It condenses, just like a cold glass of water on a hot day. There's sweat on that glass. That warm air hits the wall system on its way out. As it's getting colder and colder, it leaves moisture on the building materials inside the wall system, right? That's mold and structural rot. Ability to control indoor ventilation and have balanced indoor air. We're going to talk about that in a later slide. We can filter our fresh air instead of accidentally taking it through our sill plate. Measured by a blower door test. So one of the, the gold standard for measuring air tightness is that blower door test we talked about. And can be monitored by sensors in the home. You can go on Amazon and buy a $40 indoor air quality sensor. It'll tell you carbon dioxide levels, PM 2.5, PM 10, everything you want to know about your indoor air quality. Right? So it's important to understand that the availability of those tools is now raising our awareness about indoor air quality. We talked a little bit about ACH 50, 7 being a very leaky house, 1 being a very tight house, 3 being a good target for most existing houses.
Wayne, would you mind sharing your screen again? I think we lost you on the screen share. We have an audience at home that is looking for your slides. And guys in the classroom, thank you for being here. We are, our food will be here in about 20 minutes. I got you guys. I got you guys. We're good. Thank you.
Good to go.
Yes, sir.
Right. So for those of you on Zoom, we're catching up. We were talking about air tightness. You certainly can reach out to me and I'll make sure I send these slides out to you. Okay. Building envelope. Talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. So a building envelope is that imaginary line around the outside of your building, and you want that line to be uninterrupted, correct? You also want that line to be as thick as possible. Thickness represents the resistance to heat transmission between the inside and outside. Everybody hear of a Yeti cooler? They stay cold. I think they stay cold for days. You gotta get water above them. But they stay cold for days. Like I had a friend who had a Yeti cooler in his hot garage for 7 days. They opened it up and the beer and ice was still cold. Okay. Yeah. And so why is that? Like, how does Yeti do that? Yet, you buy a thermos cooler and it does the same thing. And then by day 2 or day 3, the ice is all gone. I mean, that's still remarkable 2 or 3 days, but man, 7 is unbelievable, right? We're talking about the thickness of that line and thermal bridging. We're gonna talk about some things related to that. So how important is insulation? Turns out, really important. So this is a BTU calculator. You can Google BTU calculator and it'll pull up a calculator just like this, okay? And the first slide with the X next to it has a surface area of 2,880 square feet. Why did I pick that number? I took a typical new construction house, 52 by 19, times 2 floors, and I added up all the surface area of the walls, okay, which is 2,880 square feet. Now we're gonna say 2,880 square feet, it's 70 degrees outside, or it's 70 degrees inside, sorry. And it's 0 degrees outside, so we want it to be 70 in the home, and it's cold outside, it's 0. The R value is 13. We need, in this house, without air leakage, this is a perfectly airtight house, without a ceiling, a perfectly insulated ceiling, is 15,507 BTUs. So that's pretty good. Not a lot of BTUs, right, lost to R value. However, that same house, same temperature differential, we want it to be 70 inside instead of 0. It's 0 outside. Our R value is 32. We use 6,300 BTUs. So by increasing the insulation, and remember, insulation is cheap. We've cut the energy load by 65%. Right? That's how important insulation is. Why is it super important? Well, you pay for the insulation once. How long does it work? Forever. You install it right. Works forever. Right? So your kids will still be warm in that house if it was built right. Mechanical systems. Heat pump.
You didn't do one with the roof, because the roof is more important than the walls, right?
You're getting ahead of me.
Alright.
But yes. Mechanical systems, yes. Derek raises a good point. 75% of your heat loss is vertical. So what's the most important part of your house to insulate?
Attic.
That's right. If you have no insulation anywhere else, your house should have a hat on. If it doesn't have if your child is going outside and they refuse to wear a jacket, give them a hat.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep it on.
When in Chicago, if you got brick and plaster, like, you can probably do the attic, but the walls are hard.
It's tough to do the walls.
It's
The walls
hard
are
to do.
harder to do. But it's easy to get the walls airtight.
Yeah, okay.
And that's that was, but. Stealing like slide 14. It's okay. It's okay. So heat pump versus the gas furnace. So the photo here is the heat pump at my house. Okay. So this is the cold climate heat pump. Yeah, this is me in my backyard. Right? This is what an air conditioner looks like, right? Here, this little cartoon in the bottom. And that what's that air conditioner doing? It's winter time. It's doing nothing.
I was gonna say he's chilling.
Right. So how much did that air conditioner cost you? Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And 8 months a year, what does it do? Nothing. Isn't that crazy? What's a heat pump? A heat pump is an air conditioner that doesn't take the winter off. It has a reversing valve. And it takes heat from the outside and moves it in the winter months. So just like your air conditioner takes heat from the inside, moves it out in the summer. If it had a reversing valve, it could literally spin that refrigerant around and pump it the other way. And that is why the EPA declassified all central air conditioners from Energy Star. They are no longer worth installing as far as the EPA is concerned. Heat pumps can work for you all year round. This is a cold climate heat pump, so it's a special one. This one could take heat from -17 degree air and heat a house. Okay? Most heat pumps go down to about 25 degrees. So the EPA, let's say, today, what, 35 outside today? 40, okay. On most winter days in Chicago, you could heat your house with a regular heat pump. Now, the extreme cold days, they don't work. You need a cold climate heat pump. But if you had a furnace, and instead of a central air conditioner, it had a heat pump attached to it, you could use that heat pump 90% of the time to heat your house. And the gas would only come on during the coldest days of the year. Does that make sense?
So that's the way to retrofit. Oh.
That's a retrofit strategy, absolutely.
So you're saying that if you have central air, you can get a heat pump and have it attached to it?
No, the heat pump would replace the central air conditioner.
Oh,
And literally, you can use that heat pump most of the year to heat your house.
What happens for the air now?
Air conditioning, you're gonna use, click it to cool inside on the thermostat, the reversing valve slides over and air conditioning.
Well, the heat pump is both, is essentially.
That's right.
So are we gonna talk about costs?
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. All right, so let's talk about operating costs. for a minute. Excuse me. A heat pump moves heat and a furnace makes heat. Why is there an important difference there? So when we take gas into our house, right, there's explosive combustible gas coming into your house through a pipe, through a meter, into a pipe. And then it hits a burner, it's ignited, right? That heat from that ignition. What's anybody here know the percentage of efficiency their furnaces at home? 80%, 85.
You got the sticker that say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even says somewhere around 80 to 90, right? So what does that mean? That means if it's 90%,
Of the time, it ain't.
Well, almost, almost. So I'll give you an exact. So if your furnace is 80% efficient, 80% of the gas that you're buying and burning is heating the house. 20% is heating, going up the chimney and heating the plant. Okay? A heat pump, what's the efficiency of a heat pump? The furnace is, if a furnace is 80%. A heat pump, 380%.
Okay.
You use 1 watt of electricity and it moves 3.8 watts of heat from one location to the other. It is, the physics axiom here is, it is more efficient to move heat than make heat. You follow me? When we're combusting something, we're making heat from carbon. When we're using a heat pump, we're just taking heat from one location and moving it over there. Now, it's not hot air. I want to make sure everybody understands. We're not moving hot air. We're moving heat. Okay, this is energy, right? And so this is where I lose people. And if you're on Zoom and you're lost out there, I'm going to challenge your brain momentarily. If you take your refrigerator at home and you walk up to it, you open the fridge and you grab out the milk. The milk's still liquid, right? Because the other up of your fridge is 37 degrees, 33, 34, it's above freezing. Right? If you stuck that milk in the freezer, how cold? Will that milk still pour in an hour?
No.
Yeah, it become frozen because the freezer's colder than the fridge, right?
yeah.
Okay. Now, remember, we can't move cold. We can't make cold. All we can do is move heat. Okay, when you go to physics class and you take physics 101, I'll tell you the first thing, you can only move heat. That's it. Okay, so we're taking more heat from the freezer than we're taking from the fridge. So that is my proof to you that we can take heat from cold air, is everybody has a freezer. And if you believe that your freezer will keep your ice cream cold, then you believe a heat pump will heat your house on a cold day.
That's what a back of the refrigerator.
Hmm?
Back of the refrigerator. How does that-
That's right, that's right. It's pulling heat from inside that box into the room.
Today years old. So the higher you have it,
So do
colder
you,
you have it. The more heat
would
is.
you still need a furnace or a boiler or whatever, all this kind of stuff?
So, let's start with,
What you
if
got?
you are, I have this, and that's it.
No furnace,
No
no,
furnace,
no
yeah.
water tank.
No gas in
Well,
your
you got
house.
I have no gas line in there.
So you got the electric tankless water?
We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna.
Okay, okay.
We're gonna talk-
Offline,
Yeah, I don't wanna lose my Zoom conversation.
Okay,
All right, so this is the system I have at my house, and that's all I have. I don't have a furnace. You can, if you have a brand new furnace, say, that's pretty
Yeah.
efficient,
2 years
and
ago.
you don't wanna spend all this money on converting to a heat pump. You could, and let's say your air conditioner is getting old or not new, right? You could replace your air conditioner with a heat pump. They add a control system that switches between the heat pump and the furnace depending on the outdoor temperature. So when it's too cold for the heat pump to work,
Oh, okay.
the system says, hey, you turn the gas on.
Yeah, Wayne, I have a question. Does the heat pump work with the ducting system?
It can, I'm gonna show you some photos in a little while, I'll answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Then eventually you can eliminate the furnace.
So this photo, well, once we get rid of our furnace and our gas, we can now own our power, right? So this is a solar array on top of one of my clients' buildings. This is an inverter, so we produce direct current on the rooftop using the sunlight. It runs down to this transformer inside the house, which is called an inverter, that converts it from DC to AC. Sends it to the panel. If it's not used by the house, it sends it back to the grid. And it runs our meter backwards. When you design a zero energy house, what you're doing is you're running your meter backwards from March to October. And then you take that energy back October to March. Does everybody follow me? It's called net metering. And that is how you create a zero energy house in Chicago. Obviously,
Night court gonna be mad.
they are very mad at me. I am also mad at them. They charged me $1,600 and graffitied my driveway with no gas once I had paid them to remove the gas line. So took a power washer and counting to 100 for me to get past it. So, and a check from ComEd to pay for the
Rebate.
$1,600. That's right. That's right. So now we're all in the sales business, right? So I want to talk a little bit about selling. Remember, I touched on benefits being what we do, right? We talk benefits. Hey, this is an open concept kitchen. Well, what does that mean? When you have friends over and everybody wants to hang out in the kitchen, there's plenty of space for everybody. Your parties will be better. But if you just say open concept kitchen, that might actually turn some people off, right? So we gotta talk benefits. We gotta stop speaking the language of features, right? And with heating and cooling and insulation and solar and all this stuff, we have to learn the benefits so that we know how to sell it. Does that make sense? So it's the benefits, not the features. And this slide breaks down the benefits of different systems. So if you have solar, you can own your own power, you have decreased operation cost, right? When you have benefits of a heat pump, you're more efficient with decreased operating costs, it's more comfort, it's safer. Why is it safer? Why is a heat pump safer than a furnace? Anybody? That's right. Well, what does that mean?
Better air quality in the house, less going out of the house, less coming in from that
Well,
slab.
that's air sealing, yeah.
Oh.
But I'm just talking furnace, just
Oh,
a
okay.
heat pump and a furnace.
Energy bill savings.
Yeah, yeah. What happens, why do we have carbon monoxide detectors in our houses?
Because it escapes.
Because we might die in the middle of the night because our furnace decided to kill us. I mean, but for real, this is why this is why we have 27 of them in our houses. Right? Do heat pumps have any combustion at all?
Mm.
No.
So, safety, right? Who doesn't want a safer house? Quieter. They have blowers that slow down, so heat pumps, modern heat pumps, cold climate heat pumps in particular, are what's called VRF, or variable refrigerant flow. You're gonna hear that term once you get deep enough into this industry. And what that means is, instead of being on and off, think of your central air conditioner in summer, you hear it come on, the lights dim momentarily. The blower kicks on, right? And you're like, oh my God, it's gonna be cool again. But as soon as it shuts off, what's your brain? Oh, it shut off, it's gonna get warm, right? So that is called overcycling. So typically a furnace is oversized and the house is very leaky. And so the furnace kicks on, or the air conditioner kicks on, it shoots a couple degrees past the set temperature, it shuts off. And then it falls a couple degrees past the set temperature, and it comes back on,
Yeah.
it swings up and down. Heat pumps do not do any of that.
I got a click sound.
Variable refrigerant flow means it slows down to maintain the temperature it's set to. So it slows the blower down and it slows its energy flow down from the heat pump. What that means is it's more efficient, doesn't waste energy starting up and dropping, right? And it's more comfortable. Right? So comfort is a big factor. It's also quieter, so the blower's not always on and on. Water heaters and clothes dryers can be heat pumps as well. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. Benefits of air sealing, we talked a lot about this already. Less air leakage means less outdoor air pollution, less ability to control indoor air quality, or more ability to control indoor air quality, reduced operating cost, reduced heating and cooling cost, more comfort, resilience, no drafts, humidity control. So we want to talk about these benefits, obviously in terms that your client and customer understands, right? You don't want to necessarily sound like an Android, but you do want to know that these are the benefits and you got to somehow speak this to the population you're working with. Benefits of insulation, talk about reduced heating and cooling costs, more comfort, more resilience. We talked a little bit about resilience and your sense of security in a house. Your house, why did a caveman move into a cave? Why didn't they just set up in a field? Say, oh, I'm here.
Wind and
Shelter,
weather
right.
and elements. and-
Shelter, mountain lions, I mean, our houses are our safe place. And the safer they are, the more security they give us, the healthier we are. The healthier we are emotionally, the healthier we are physically. Does that make sense to people?
Oh, yeah.
Benefits of certification, you really want to start explaining to consumers why they should be looking for certification in their buildings. Peace of mind that quality control was used. If a building is certified voluntarily by a home builder or a flipper, they're not hiding anything, right? They're having somebody come in and verify the work they're doing. Your objective understanding of the building's performance, they tell you how much energy that building will use. So you really actually can measure apples to apples. If you have one certified building and another certified building, you know how they rank up. In Chicago, we do sort of something like this, the heating disclosure, right? It tells you how much heat that a building uses or doesn't use. And I think that can be misleading because it's not a certification, it's just this is what the bills are. Doesn't tell you how comfortable the house is, doesn't tell you if it's insulated, doesn't tell you anything really except for the bills.
So I guess if it's high enough, you know that there's
There's a
leaks
problem.
and some waste. and
There's a problem. Yeah, it's an indicator.
Yeah.
Is about what it is, right? So objective understanding of the building's performance, tax and utility rebates. If you get a building certified, what are some incentives around this? Anybody know about these? I'm going to list off a couple. So if you're a remodeler or if you're a home builder and you have a building that's 0H certified, you are entitled to a class 45L tax credit, which is $5,000 from the federal government. If you are building a house to ComEd's all electric building standard, ComEd will give you $5,000 per unit. If you have a 2 flat, $10,000.
Is this in a rebate for taxes?
No, comment is just a check. To
We
the
like
center.
that.
The 45L, which is a separate program through Department of Energy, is an IRS tax credit. The bottom here, safer, more comfort, more efficient, lower cost, more resilient, better design, quieter, less maintenance, more control. This is the language of selling green. Okay. Very hard when you're a realtor and you get your first green property. You know, it's different, right? It's not the same. People walk in, where's the furnace? Why is that? I don't wanna cook on that,
Ooh,
right? I mean,
gas stove is my preference.
so
Wow.
there's a lot of stuff that you have to, as a realtor, sort of be prepared to present to. And that language is critical in understanding the way to present it to be successful. I have sold over 50 high-performance houses, and everybody has walked in. Everybody who's currently bought one has walked in going, oh, maybe 3 or 4 exceptions knew what an induction stove was. Have walked in going, I just can't. Can you help? Right? I like the
Gas
rest,
line.
but I got it. You know, can you give me a gas line for cooking? This, people literally bargain with you, you know? So let's talk a little bit about building envelopes. Kind of move into kind of the nuts and bolts, right? Triple pane windows. If you're replacing windows here in Chicago, you'd almost be a fool to not replace them with triple pane glass. Okay, you go from an R value of 3 to an R value of 5, which is significant, cuts down the energy loss by more than 60%, okay? And it leaves the house quieter. We all live in an urban environment here in Chicago. It's nice not to hear the noise from the outside sometimes, right? And we have local manufacturers here that make them for airports at a very affordable price. So we can buy them here for a lot cheaper than they are in other windows. So triple pane glass is almost a no-brainer here. More efficient doors. You know, everybody wants to buy a cheap door because cheap doors are, man, they're cheap, right? But if you pay $100 more for a better rated door, the savings are tremendous. Better, remember we talked about air leakage and what that means? A better door is better air seal. We talk about R value and what that means. A better door has a better R value. Okay? So, you know, cutting your cost on your doors and windows is a way to save money in the near term, but it's a way to spend a whole lot more money over the coming years. Now, how do we convince our flippers to do it? Because hey, I find it really hard. Like my flippers are buy a building and say, wait, I'm gonna renovate this thing, it's gonna be fabulous. It's gonna be subway tile here, it's gonna be island, I'm gonna have like 800 square feet of courts, it's gonna be awesome.
And I don't have to live here, so why do I care what the bill's gonna
That's
be in the
right, that's
future?
right, that's right. You have to assure them that you can help them get value for it. I know I can sell this. This is a competitive advantage. I won't let this get lost in our sale. Okay, when you're a realtor, when you're a green realtor and you're pushing your clients to do this, not all your clients are gonna do it. A lot of your clients are still gonna build the same crappy stuff they built last year until code changes, and we're working on that. Code is gonna change. However, the people that are willing to do it, you need to also take that under responsibility. They have gone out on a limb and invested in that building more than they needed to deliver a better product for your customer. And as their agent, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that outcome is good. There's a huge code of ethics issue here. Like we all have to be experts in what we do. When you have a client who is building to a higher standard, you need to become an expert in that higher standard. Does that make sense? Okay, and this is just part of our job. And we need to look at it that way. We need to understand that it's part of our responsibility. If our client is willing to do this, and they've listened to us, we need to make sure we're equipped to actually go forward in the market and not leave that stuff quiet. Make sure you're a home buyer that tours that house. My tours of Green Line House, I think a few guys have been here for a Green Line tour with me. They're an hour long. If you schedule 30 minutes to come see my house, your day is shot. Because your customer, after listening to me for 20 minutes, is gonna wanna finish that hour-long presentation, right?
Mhm.
So. Insulated foundations, new construction houses. Kills me how. We don't, this is like the cheapest thing to do to a foundation, but nobody does it. We literally put foam panels on the outside of the foundation before we backfill it. And by doing that, we solve a few problems. One, that building is way more efficient. Right? So it's got an insulated foundation versus none. Zero. Like people, oh, the ground's insulated. The ground is 55 degrees all year round. Last I checked, nobody wanted to live at 55 degrees. Right? So that ground is constantly costing that house energy 24/7 all year. Alright, so if you insulate that foundation, you are saving a ton of energy right there. This stuff does not cost a lot of money. And it adds a ton of value to the owner of that building. So again, if your client is delivering and building to this standard, you need to be talking about that. It's invisible once the house is built, right? Does anybody actually look at the side of the foundation when the house is built? There's a little clue when you see this little flashing here that kind of comes off at an angle and out. And then the wall is gonna be there. So if that foundation wall has that little kick flashing, you can ask, is that an insulated foundation? And it probably is. Okay, so it's just a way for you to spot it in the field. And it's important to recognize people and do that because we want them to continue doing that. Strong and efficient framing. So how many people here believe that a brick house is better in Chicago than a frame house? I'm gonna challenge you.
No.
Oh.
To be honest.
Uh-huh.
The gloves off. All right. Let's talk about why. All right. I'm gonna start with energy and I'm gonna work my way out. Okay. Now, I love a Chicago brick building. Let's start there. If you have an existing Chicago brick building, don't tear it down. Keep it.
Okay.
Sorry. That's all. Why is a new frame building better than a new brick building? How wide is a city Chicago lot?
25, 125.
Right. You know what the zoning setback is?
How
So
many
the
properties?
space between the property line and the building,
Well, how many front feet? 25?
so from the sides.
Oh,
It's because the narrow part's at 25, right? So it's 2 feet. So what's the widest building you can put on a lot? If you're a developer and you're building a brand new building, with the lot's 25 feet, and you have 2 feet on each side,
23?
21,
well, I got 2 feet on each side.
21,
Oh, shit.
right?
21, right? So how thick is a masonry wall? Foot thick. 8 inches to 12 inches thick.
Oh,
Is that insulated? Is there conduit in that masonry? There's nothing, you still gotta frame it in. If you're building a masonry building, you're gonna build a building that is 1 foot at least narrower on the interior than a frame building. Why? Because you can put conduit and you can put insulation in the outside walls of a frame building. Those walls that take up that space are insulated walls. Does that make sense? Whereas if it's a masonry building, you still have to frame that building in and insulate. So from a practical perspective, if you build a frame building, you get a wider interior. Is that important to buyers? I think so. Right.
more living space.
Yeah, more living space instead of dead space, right? Let's talk about energy and it relates to that. If I build a frame building with an 8-inch thick outside wall, right next to a masonry building that is built out of 8-inch cinder block, that's not insulated, right? What's the R value of that cinder block? 0. What's the R value of that 8-inch wall? 26. Okay, so you see that energy perspective and that real estate it's using, because you're paying money for a lot, right? Every square foot of that lot costs you some money. Right? And you're using up a lot of those square feet to have just bricks standing.
And heating someplace that's not part of the interior.
Well, you still have to insulate it, but the city's not gonna let you build that building without insulating it. So they're gonna make you frame up the interior. And and you'll have an R19 building, because you're gonna do it to minimum code, because you don't wanna take up more space, right? You already got space lost to the masonry, and then you got another 6 inches for that R19. Do you really wanna take 8 for an R? But no, right? And then with frame buildings, we can do what's called staggered studs. So in this photo here, if you look at the sill plate at the bottom, you see how that's an 8-inch sill plate, 8 inches wide, and then there's a 2x4 stud. This stud holds the drywall. The next stud is also 2x4 and it holds the sheeting. So what does that mean? There is no thermal bridge. When heat hits this drywall and conducts into that wood, there's insulation between that wood and the wall. And this is what's called continuous insulation. That means when we think about a frame building, and we think about the conduction of the stud from the drywall to the outside of the building, that stud actually conducts heat. So if you take a thermal camera to a building and look at it in the wintertime, you'll actually see a bunch of vertical red lines where the studs are moving heat from the inside to the outside. 1/16 of every frame building in Chicago is uninsulated. You wrap that one up in your brain, right? So that's a performance gain. What's another reason we can frame this way? If this building is if this plate is 8 inches wide, we get a lot more insulation. Code is 6, right? So we get more insulation out of it. And we're actually using less lumber. These are 2x4s. Code calls for 2x6. Right? So this actually is more lumber efficient, gets a better wall system, thermally broken, and when we compare it to masonry, they're not even close. Okay, durability, lifespan is the same. Masonry building, not made out of concrete, and a wood frame building, if properly maintained, should last 100 years. Right? Let's talk a little bit about materials as well. What's our modern masonry made out of nowadays?
Stone.
Well, it used to be stone, like when we drive through Chicago, we see our gray stone buildings, right? And these are stone, limestone. We see our cement. So when we see an old brick building with face brick, it's terracotta clay brick, right? That's been fired in an oven. We don't do that anymore. We don't make bricks anymore. We don't have masons carving limestone out of quarries anymore. What do we make our masonry buildings out of now? Cement. What's the biggest difference between cement and any of these other materials? That's right. Cement is a sponge. So when you build building out of concrete brick, you are literally building a concrete sponge. And unless you seal that material every 5 years, it is going to move water from the outside to the inside. It is going to move water into the material, and when it freeze thaws, it's going to explode. Right? Because the water those ice crystals expand and you see cracks in that masonry. You have to remember a frame building in our climate performs better. It performs better thermally. It costs less to produce. It uses less, it's less carbon intensive, and it's less maintenance. That masonry building, if you don't seal it every 5 to 10 years for $10,000 for a 3-unit building, every 5 to 10 years, it's gonna fail.
But is this newer construction?
This is new construction.
Okay, yeah, not the old
Existing
fashioned
buildings,
clay.
so the wonderful thing about clay and limestone is terracotta is very water resistant, okay? Limestone, stone is water resistant. We're still worried about moisture moving through those systems, but it's the grout lines that we worry about, not the material itself. Okay. Engineered insulation. So how many people, there's big stuff, fiberglass, right? We buy lots of it, we just put it up in buildings and we're done, right? What are some of the downsides of fiberglass? Pretty leaky material, like you put it up in the bay and there's some space on the sides where air can kind of leak through. And it's better than nothing. Right? It's also fiberglass, which in California is a suspected carcinogen, and they're thinking about banning it. Just like asbestos, we use as insulation, fiberglass is currently used as an insulation. This material you're seeing here is called cellulose, which is also a very affordable material. Some of you have seen like the hoppers at a home center where you can rent this thing that blows insulation everywhere. You would use cellulose in that machine. Cellulose is recycled Amazon boxes, for lack of a better thing, right? Used to be recycled newspaper. It's treated with borates, it's treated with fire retardant. It's non-carcinogenic. It's a natural material. It's cheap and it's very effective. And because of the way it's installed, where it's blown into a space, it actually helps with our air sealing and our air tightness too. Okay. So this material is a preferred material, and you can see they put it up with like a netting, and then they put some holes in it and they blow it in. Okay. Dense packed cellulose.
Cellulose.
Mhm. We also use foams. And why are foams nice? Foams are nice because they air seal, right? Why are foams not nice? Well, they're really expensive. If you're gonna insulate an entire building with foam, you're gonna get sticker shock. That number is gonna be 500-600% higher than the fiberglass cost, okay? Number two, it has a high global warming potential. So whenever we use foam, it's off-gassing. And all the chemicals that are coming off it have a high global warming potential. And so foam has a very high carbon cost. It takes years for a building to recover its carbon saved from the foam installation. So we tell people, don't insulate an entire building with foam. Use it for what it's good for. Use a little bit of it where you need it. And in this case, we use it against a roof deck, 1 inch thick, and then we do the rusted cellulose. Or we use it against a rim joist where we need some sealing and a renovation, or a band joist. If any of your developers ever have a question about how to use different insulation strategies, you can always tap me and I'm happy to share with you guys what I know. But there are other products out there besides fiberglass and foam that give us a great benefit. Cellulose is the green builder's material of choice. 90 to 95% of the insulation done in the buildings I work with are done with cellulose. We talked about that imaginary red line around the building, it being airtight. This blue skin is that line. Okay, so what is the difference between blue skin and Tyvek? So blue skin is a sticker. Tyvek is fabric you're stapling onto a building.
I think that's what
Well,
it's
what,
pink.
so one, you got
Yellow
Tyvek. So that you're a big, if you have Tyvek, you're already doing better than most houses. Most houses don't even have Tyvek, right?
That's what the contractor thought. I
That's
just
right.
noticed a lot of excess too, like, is that mine? Can I have it?
So
The extra.
what's the biggest problem with Tyvek? It's attached with staples. There's 1,000 holes in it before you put the siding on. Right? So the material itself, the way it's installed is leaky. And this is your air barrier. That's the function, right? That's why it's got those little washers around there to help seal around every hole, right? Yeah. Well, this material is applied, it's a sticker,
Wow.
and it sticks on the building. It's also a cross-linked fabric, so what that means is as you drive a nail through it to attach your siding, it seals around every nail. Right? Much smarter material to use, keeps your building airtight. The windows, you'll notice here, are taped to this material chemically so that they basically bond to it. You see here in this photo. You got the window and this tape bonds that flashing to that blue skin. It's called a butyl tape. The roofing membrane if you look at the very top of these buildings here, you see a little white membrane, actually is chemically bonded to that blue skin as well. So there's an airtight joint from the roof all the way down the building, around every opening. This is before we insulate, right? So that air sealing, air changes per hour we talked about. These buildings come in at 0.3 air changes per hour.
Oh, less than one.
Yeah. So this balloon only deflates 30% in 1 hour. Right? So now how many BTUs is that? That's 30,000.
What was that covering that you referred to, the one that I most likely got?
Well, 5X, yeah.
Tyvek?
Nothing wrong, I mean, look, it's better to have 5X than not. Right, that's a good start, as they say, but if you have your choice, spend a little more money on blue skin, and you end up with a better outcome. That makes sense?
Siding company didn't give that option, but that's good to know as a consumer.
This is actually something that we're gonna have to work on as an industry, is asking these questions of our subcontractors, because they probably don't even know it exists. Like, they think Tyvek is great. And they don't realize that there's this other thing out here. And that comes from the commercial world, and it's working its way into residential. In commercial real estate and construction, these codes are much higher. Right, the energy efficiency codes in commercial construction are insanely high compared to residential. So these materials have been developed for that space, and now they're working their way into our space. ERVs, we talked about building an airtight house a lot, and now I'm sure there's somebody out there thinking, God, what about like when my teenager uses the bathroom, or the smelly gym socks in my kid's room? Yeah, I mean, there's indoor air pollution, right? Like, we breathe, people use bathroom, there's steam showers, there's people cook, right? Like, there's all this stuff inside your house that you kind of want to get out, right? And if it doesn't leak out, then how do you get it out? Well, you get it out intentionally. So number one, you have good exhaust hoods, so like your kitchen hood should really work. Your bathroom fans should really work. They should be very efficient systems with dampers and built properly, so they actually do their job right and keep the house efficient. You know, you spend an extra $100 on your bath fan install, and you're gonna save a whole lot more than that over the life of that bath fan from it not being leaky and operating properly.
We just found out, well, we found out after we bought our building that the exhaust fans in the bathrooms were just decorations.
Yeah.
We had to have a hole drilled and built to actually.
That is actually extremely common. People, especially in the suburban communities, you're gonna see bath fans in bathrooms because they're code, right, in a lot of suburbs. But the inspector never checks to see if it's connected to the outside. So, you know, and it's just one of those things, right? So what's an ERV? This is this system. This makes sure we have good air and air quality. So I have one of these in my house. This is actually this silver one is the one in my house, and it's called a fresh air system. And so what we do here is we take in through one of these pipes fresh air from the outside. We filter fresh air from the outside. We filter that fresh air, so I can take out pollen. I can take out wildfire smoke, right? I bring that air into the building. I take stale air from the inside, bring it in there. I move the heat from the indoor air stream to the outdoor air stream. So the air never touches each other, so they stay separate, but we move the heat energy over. That new fresh air that's now conditioned to the interior temperature comes into the building. And that stale air that's now been stripped of its energy is spit out. This system runs, in my house, runs 24/7, 365 days a year. I have fresh air in my house, even in the wintertime when you'll never open a window. I have fresh air in my house when it's 100 degrees outside, you'll never open a window. And it's efficient fresh air, and it is clean. I have a train 2 blocks away from my house, there's no diesel exhaust in the air coming in my house. During the Canadian wildfire smoke we had last year, there was no PM 2.5 in my house, right? So this is tremendously important. Once you tighten up a house, you want to make sure you have managed fresh air. The system you're looking at here, the Brown system, is a pretty nice one. It cost about $1,100 off the rack. Okay, so it's another appliance people have to buy. But it's not something NASA makes, and it's something any HVAC contractor can install. Okay, very easy to install. When you tighten up a house, it's an important addition to the house to make sure that indoor air quality is good. Somebody had asked me what a heat pump looks like that replaces a furnace. I think in the Zoom audience. This here is a Mitsubishi air handler that replaces a gas furnace. So you would take the furnace out, you put this in its place and connect it to the ductwork. That simply replaces a ducted furnace system. This small box here with the wall mount, that's a typical heat pump, a split unit, so that'll go on the wall anywhere in the house that you can place them. And that'll deliver heating and cooling to that zone. Heat pumps are all zonable. The top right is what we call a cassette, so that would go into the ceiling or in an attic somewhere, and mini ducts would come off it, going to each room. So heat pumps can deliver heating and cooling in many different ways. So it's important to understand that if you have ductwork, you could probably use it. You may have to work with that ductwork a little bit. Most ductwork is leaky. There's what's called a duct leakage test that an energy rater will do. They'll actually depressurize the duct system, find the leaks in it and seal it. There are sealing systems they can use to line the ductwork with. They depressurize it and then they spray like basically a foam in it that just lines all the cracks in the system. So that way you can tighten up your ductwork, makes it more efficient. It also improves the indoor air quality by reducing air leakage inside the wall systems of the house.
So this is a way to get the heat pump and not have to get rid of your ductwork
Potentially.
and use those extra accessories inside.
You know, it's always a trade-off of efficiency. Should I use the ductwork or not is a question of what condition the ductwork is in. You know, I'll give you a great example. If your ductwork is in an attic, uninsulated, it's gonna be kind of a, hey, should I really use this? This ductwork is in a hot attic, and in summertime, it's 130 degrees in that attic, right? You're trying to cool that the air in that ductwork. How much are you gonna have to insulate that ductwork for it to not be inefficient? Does that make sense? So depending on where your ductwork is, the construction of it, how leaky it is, the condition it's in, some ductwork has asbestos in it. Right? You certainly want to abandon that if you find that, right? But the good news is that if you don't use your ductwork, there are other ways, including the wall mounts and this cassette, to actually bring heating and cooling in through a heat pump without using ductwork if needed.
So those are the accessories that you need inside if you're gonna convert over to the heat pump.
So like if you have radiators, for example, you're gonna pick one of these other systems.
So I used cassettes in my house, so I have a very nice hot water system that I wanted to keep. So I put a bunch of cassettes around so that I could add air conditioning, and then I could also use the heat pump to heat my house until it got really cold, and then I would just turn on the hot water heat.
Hey, Derek, question for you. How often did you have to, cause I get this question a lot, how often did you have to turn on the other heating system?
I was very lazy, so when it got even a little bit cold, and this was like 7 or 8 years ago, when the heat pumps were less efficient. So like if it was like 50, 60, I could heat with heat pumps. I think the modern systems are much, much better. But really what I wanted was air conditioning. I wanted to keep my radiators and I wanted air conditioning. So those cassettes are really nice because you actually just use various coils in various places. So like if I did like a big new HVAC system, I would have had to do like a major trunk. And this was a beautiful historic house with beautiful plaster moldings and like really lovely stuff. So if I use those cassettes, I used 3 cassettes. So I basically did 2 in the attic, down into the 2nd floor and into the 3rd, and 1 in the basement up. So I was able to basically like take the cold where I wanted it, you know, because you have all these basically line sets that just come with cassettes. So anyway, I didn't have to mess up any plaster work. I didn't have to mess up any doors. I didn't have to mess up any stuff.
Thank you.
So it's important to understand that a good HVAC installer, and there's not a lot of them yet, but hopefully they'll be trained up in our communities and be living in our communities, right? That's the hope, is remember we talked a little bit about some of the social issues around this. If we can create this skill set in our neighborhoods, we can keep this money in our community and we can find experts in our community.
Well, I had to talk with a bunch of HVAC contractors to get it there, but so this was a house in the Jackson Park Highlands, so like beautiful old house. Like I really wanted to keep it looking nice, so like, you know, I knew I wanted to do this and not do a big ugly system.
I think if anybody wants to come in and rip a duck trunk through Derek's house, it'd be escorted out immediately.
No, I mean, the first guy came in and like, he was like, well, we'll just take this big chunk out of the staircase, and I was like, are you, like, no, like, just go ahead and leave, like.
We're not even starting this conversation.
Mhm.
But a good heat pump contractor can get heating and cooling to any building. That's what's important to understand about it, and they can do it cost effectively. You have to be smart about the considerations, and before you even get to this step, you should have an energy rater that's already been in that house. Making sure that house is tighter, making sure that house is better insulated, and then telling you how big of a system you want. Because sizing the system is also really important. Gas equipment is big. I mean, you know, the smallest furnace you can buy is like 70,000 BTU. That, you can't even buy a 70,000 BTU heat pump, it doesn't even exist. Like the biggest one's 48, right?
Well, like, everyone was doing space pack for a while, air conditioning, and like, I think that these cassettes and things like that are more cost effective and cheaper, and like, that'll be a better way to cool a space. Like, space pack is really, really expensive, this would be about half the cost.
Well, and it's funny you should say space pack, because if anybody's ever seen one of these systems, there's little mini ducts in historic houses, you see that deep air
Mhm,
conditioning where they keep the radiators. So space pack made a name for themselves doing this, right? They have actually entered the next level, so they have entered the dragon, if you will, and they have moved to heat pumps over at space pack. And they've gone even one step further than all these guys, and they've gone to what's called air to water systems. Where now the heat pump runs continuously outside, moving heat into stored water tanks inside the building. So even if there's a power failure, a very small DC operated pump can operate the heating system in the building, because there's all this energy stored up in hot water. Okay. So Space Bank is moving into a whole nother level, but we'll get there in a later episode. You know, it's important to understand that like architecture is still important in Chicago. You know, even though we're building frame buildings, we want them to be beautiful. So hardy board is a great material. It lasts way longer than vinyl. It's more resistant to hail. It's not too much more expensive. And it's architecturally flexible. So for builders that are worried about curb appeal, clients that are worried about curb appeal in their homes, this is the material you really want to consider. We talked about cooking. So cooking is by far the most emotional part of transitioning from electricity or from gas to electricity. People have been cooking on gas for so long, they just wouldn't know what to do if they lost their gas stove. It's important to understand that induction cooking is different than gas. So induction cooking, there's no heat involved. We'll start there. The cooktop itself stays cold. It uses, this glass might look like an electric cooktop that we call Big Red gets hot. This does not get hot. It actually has magnets underneath, and those magnets actually grab the iron molecules in your cookware and shake them back and forth against each other. And so the only thing getting hot on an induction cooktop is the pot.
Oh, I made a silly comment on one of your posts that you had something close to an eye, I think, and it probably was like, girl.
Oh, I
that
think
ain't gonna
I
work.
saw that comment, yeah.
So close to the eye, brother, like.
Yeah, I think I had
a-
one post out there with like a $50 bill under a pot, what I brought to a boil, right? And the $50 bill was fine. You know, it's really important to catch people's attention to understand this, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody walk into one of my listings, see the electric, I can't cook on that.
I personally hate
And
electric.
they start
I'm
walking,
just gonna be
and
honest.
then I have to, at that point, as the agent, I have to sell this house, right, intervene. Wait, stop. It's not what you think it is.
Okay.
And they go, what are you talking about? And I immediately pull out the $50 bill. Immediately. Because now they're like, pull out money. I have your attention, right? And then I stick the $50 bill underneath the cold pot of water. I still have your attention, right? Now I really got your attention. Now, even if you were leaving, you're like, I have to see this man burn his money, right? And so you want to chat about it, right? But now you're allowing me your attention. which allows me to explain the benefits of this induction stove to you. And in 0 cases, I have had somebody say, I still want a gas stove. After that. Okay,
All the benefits.
well, it's important to talk about that, and it's important to show them the magic of this, right? So that cold cooktop is able to do your cooking work without actually having combustion or heat involved. Safer, better for your indoor air quality, there's none of that benzene, there's none of nitrous dioxide. If you have kids with asthma in the household, your gas stove is not great for them, okay? So this is an important step in our transition is induction cooking.
Those are actually on the market?
Oh, yeah.
Get out of here.
I have 2, I have 2 of these, they're in many of my listings, and you go to, they're at Home Depot on the aisle now.
They're in all the-
There are listings, and I just thought it was a regular.
Under $1,000.
Well, most are still electric, so most are still the old one,
Yeah,
but then if you see induction, that's different.
you don't know.
And so so I'm waiting for the day that they don't make the old ones anymore, which is coming, they just haven't like quite figured it out yet.
My question is about conversion. I have a gas stove, I have a gas line in my home, in my investment. What would be necessary to make that change?
For retrofitting, typically you're gonna have to bring more current, you bring a 220 plug to this, just like you would an electric stove. So 220 outlet, there are some
Somebody like electrician.
there are some coming that use 120 power. For like apartments and things that are harder to retrofit. And they have a battery in them. So the reason these are 220 is because to get that much induction, like when you're simmering and stuff, you can do induction just fine on a regular power. Right? But when you go to the boost function, so I can boil a pot of water in 5 minutes flat. Okay, because I can dump 4,500 watts of energy at 95% efficiency into that water, right? Which is induction. Gas, by the way, you turn on your gas, the gas you're buying, 62% of it is heating up you, heating up the room, going up the hood. 38% of it's doing the cooking work. Okay, so it's very inefficient. So if I'm able to push more power into that water faster using induction, so it might take you 15 minutes to boil that water on a gas stove. It takes me 5 on induction. Okay, so it's important to understand there's more power, more control. I can leave chocolate melted all day. Without monitoring, I go take the dog for a walk, leave it there. Okay, because it is capable of control on that level. Right, so induction cooktops are a big upgrade. Another benefit, when I'm done with fried chicken night on Fridays, I get rid of the pot, I take some Dawn, I wipe down the cooktop, and I'm out. There's no grates, there's no char, there's nothing. So lifestyle is better here too.
So if a pot boiled over, I mean. if
It
your
happens
soup
all the time
boiled
in my
over-
house, happens all the time in my house, and then there's water everywhere. And what do? I grab the kitchen towel, and while it's still on, I'm actually drying it up because it's not gonna burn my hands. Right? But the cooktop's not hot. And then I immediately turn it down, and I clean it up, I move the pot over, I wipe it down, I put the pot back on, I go right back to where I was. And none of that water spilled underneath the burners, none of that water put out the gas flame and blew up the house. None of that stuff happened. So it's important to know it's still electronic, right? So you're not really trying to like douse it with a fire hose, but it's pretty resilient.
Do you need special cookware?
You need magnetic cookware, so it has to be iron, stainless steel with an iron base. Anything a magnet sticks to, it will work on induction. A magnet, like the inexpensive, older non-stick cookware is aluminum typically.
What do you say to your bakers?
Well, I mean, I still have a regular oven. My oven is still the good old electric oven.
Okay,
My oven is, so I prefer an electric oven over a gas oven.
okay.
It holds temperature more consistently, it heats up faster. It's just better at what it does. So I have an electric oven and it's, last night we had pizza night, it was like,
Okay, but nothing with the gas, the bakers who swear by gas.
If you are a baker that believes gas is better than electric.
Cakes will fall.
That's old.
So one of the.
Thing.
one
I
of the
hear,
problems
I hear
with
it's,
gas-
yeah.
So one of the problems with gas as an.
I don't cook.
Not gonna say don't stomp when you walk back.
So, yeah, gas is, very hard to keep precise.
And even, I get
Yeah.
that.
So, and bakers love precision. So every baker, everybody I know that's a serious baker has an electric oven. So they have a gas cooktop. They have dual fuel range with electric. Better, we got 5 minutes, so
No, we're good. We're good. This is fascinating.
water. We gotta heat hot water. So this is a hybrid heat pump hot water heater. Alright, so everybody, somebody asked me about tankless earlier.
That's why I was, yeah.
So tankless is great, right, except, there's a couple problems with it. So number one, a gas tankless still uses gas. And it costs twice as much to operate as this. Okay, we'll start there. An electric tankless is more efficient than a gas tankless, except an electric tankless water heater takes so much power, your house probably doesn't have a big enough electrical service for it. So I had an electric tankless water heater in my Michigan place. We have 100 amps to the building, okay? The water heater, when I installed it, I was scratching my head going, how big of a wire do I need to, oh my gosh. It's 80 amps. Okay, so the wire going to it is like car jumper cables, you know? And when I would turn on the hot water, when somebody would take a shower, my lights would flicker. Like the transformer at the street didn't have enough juice to power that thing safely. Okay, so electric tankless water heaters are very intensive on instant current, so they're not really a great solution. Hybrid heat pump hot water heaters, what do? They take ambient heat from inside the room and they cool that air a little bit. They remove some of the heat out of that air and they move that heat into the water tank. By doing that, they are 380% efficient. They also have, just like a regular tanked water heater, they have electric elements in them. So if you have people taking a shower and stuff like that, you can go into high demand mode and it can use the heat pump and the elements to heat the hot water, giving you more hot water than the tank typically would allow. Okay, so it has some of the advantages of a tankless, but over all of them, this unit costs $104 a year. Remember that number. Next time you go to the home center, look at all the hot water heaters, and anybody, I have $5 for anybody that brings me $100, a better energy guide label than that from something that isn't a hybrid.
We're talking 50 a minute ago.
Right, now it's down to 5.
It's, February in real estate, I have 2 closings today, so I am not gonna bet $50 until Monday. Yeah. So, important to understand these exist. Another thing that's to understand, and people learn this lesson the hard way, these are not typically in stock at home centers, so if you wait till your water heater is broken, you're gonna be buying another gas water heater, right? This is a no-brainer for people. Convert to this. If your gas water heater is dying, this is a no-brainer. Okay, it literally costs a third to run. They cost about the same. And next year, or actually as soon as the Illinois EPA gets its program together, there are gonna be massive rebates for this equipment. So it might actually be free for something.
This is an easier one to do than per se, something that,
Than a
like,
heat pump, right?
yeah, or something like, if we have somebody rehabbing a place. This is a great,
That's easy.
because you're gonna buy a hot water tank.
That's an easy.
But let's buy something that's gonna save money. in the
That is
future,
exactly right.
Use less. budget.
Any flipper, this is an easy value add for them. Okay, that you can talk about and talk about how they're helping the environment be better. Right? Solar PV. So we talked a little bit about solar. So these systems, you know, and I got a bunch of different pictures of different projects here, but they're becoming very common. There's a website called pvvalue.com that helps you value the contributory value of solar to a property. If you have the specs of the system that's on a house, you can plug those specs into pvvalue.com along with the address. And it spits out a report for an appraiser that tells the appraiser how much that solar added to value of the building.
So it's important to have that. I need you guys to understand there's a big difference between owning a solar PV system and leasing one. If your clients ever ask you about leasing one, I would say encourage them to own it. Save up whatever they need to do, because if you don't have enough money to buy the solar yet, spend your money on something else, right? Insulate.
Even for resale, that's what I'm hearing right now.
Leasing is a
One of my clients was like, well, I don't wanna take over somebody's lease, I wanna own that even if I'm not gonna love it.
Leasing is a nightmare. The buyer of your house has to agree to the lease terms and has to agree to maintain the roof underneath those panels. Long story short here, it's a win for the consumer to do this. It's a win for the home builder. It's a win for the community. All the way around, going green is beneficial for everybody in the process, and it's beneficial for our industry. We are currently building obsolete houses. Home builders are currently building brand new 1987 Ford Tauruses, when everybody out here wants a Tesla. Right?
They're
So
good.
we need to evolve. And we need to get past where we're at, and we need to start doing the right thing. The number one way to stay on our climate action plan here in Chicago is to immediately stop building houses with gas. And to immediately start thinking of ways to start getting our existing buildings working towards being off them. That is the number one thing we need to do. And as realtors, the more you become that messenger, the more you're gonna be in line with the population of Chicago. 77% of Chicagoans believe that we should have municipal carbon regulations. That's according to the Yale Climate Study, so that's a very, very objective source of this data. And so 77% of us believe that we need to start addressing this. But, you know, in our industry, none of us really talk about it, right? So it's important, I think, that your clients see that you understand this, because in their own lives, they're trying to figure this out. They're kind of like us. They don't know where to start, right? And so we need to start becoming a source of information, correct information, to help them get to the right place. And that's what I got for you guys today.
Man,
And I'm like, right on the money on
with
time.
3 minutes to spare, that is amazing. So I know there was a huge amount of information in this.
Yes.
This entire 2 hours will be on YouTube by this evening. So that will be up. Wayne is gonna get us the slides he feels appropriate for you, and we'll get that out to everybody. And Wayne, we're gonna do another one of these soon.
Yeah, no, I don't
correct?
mind repeating. I think some folks missed today, so I'm certainly happy to do it.
I would love to do another one of these. And also Zeke, thank you so much for, as always, providing a beautiful space for us and all the things you do for the industry. If you see this video later, we would love to meet you and talk to you more.
Couple plugs.
Yes, please.
February 29, the Chicago Association of Realtors, the Sustainability Work Group, I'm the chair. We are doing electrification program. It's free, so go to the CAR website. It's an event. Sign up. Please attend. It's on Zoom. In May, we're doing the Green Luxury Summit. That's a attendance event. So I think some of you guys were there last year. You come, it's a ticketed event, lunch. It's at the Climate Action Museum. We're gonna have a couple great guests. Tom Bassigali is one of them, who's decarbonized his own personal bungalow. We're gonna talk about his journey. I think I want to bring luxury, I want to bring a conversation as to how the theme of that event is comfort, the unseen luxury. Right? And so we really want to talk about how green and luxury are aligned. Okay? We're doing a book club at the Chicago, at the Sustainability Work Group called Pretty Good House. We had our first meeting yesterday on chapters 1 to 3. We will have another meeting next month on chapters 3 to 5. If anybody wants to pick up the book and get caught up, you're welcome to join us. reach out to me if you wanna, become part of that. We meet in person once a month. And there's a lot going on, so keep your eyes open, and anybody who wants to come and see, one of my green listings, I'm doing an open house this weekend, at 6444 to 48 Roads. Projected to be Saturday, 12 to 1:30. Tentative right now, I'm still locking it down.
6440, what was the address?
6448 South Roads.
Typing that in for everybody at home.
And so I'll put that in the envelope by tonight, so if anybody wants to come out, otherwise you can always call me instead. Especially if you have a buyer. I have 3 houses, 3 net zero houses for $469 each. So brand new construction.
Wayne, you and Green Line are leading the industry. We really, really appreciate this. Guys, there is no extra food. There's like a couple cookies left. That's it. I have to get back to my place because I'm doing an interview with Realtor.com. Thank you so much, Wayne. If you guys have interest in a quick, like a clinic online about EVs, you guys all know that I traded in my gas guzzling Range Rover for a used Tesla and I love it. And there's a lot of really cool incentives from the state and from the federal government right now about that. We feel like that has been, at least in my opinion, and Wayne, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I feel like the movement towards EV is kind of actually making people come back to the table on green and sustainable housing. Because it's like, well, if I'm gonna get this plug-in car that needs this outlet and it's cheaper than gas, but I'm still paying my electric, shouldn't I think about solar? And what else, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like they're pushing us back into these conversations that we should have been having anyway about green. So,
Yeah, the very slippery slopes.
yeah, in a good way.
Once you go one part of your life electric, it's a lot of inertia there.
Guys, thank you again. At home, we are going to go ahead and conclude for today.
Nick,
And
when's the last time you were at a gas station?
to pick up a Gatorade because literally, so I've saved $500 a month. I'm actually 90 days in as of Tuesday with my used Tesla. And the reason why I say used is people are like, oh, I can't afford that kind of car. You can get any kind of EV. I love the technology of Tesla. Couldn't afford a new one. But I really, really, guys at home, we're going to go ahead and break off here. I